Hello! Hope you're doing well. Today I'm going to be talking about my conceptual production series.
So the first thing I did before I started making anything was create a concept map.
So initially I was going to create pieces that would be a response to a specific song list, and it would capture the imaginary scenes I create in my head when listening to music. And in my map, I zoomed in on how I would execute this, and that the main components that would convey this idea would be through color, which would sort of set the kind of vibe that I'm aiming for from the song, and I also planned on each piece having a different mood that would be indicated by the colors, and I wanted all the songs to be instrumental so lyrics wouldn't have an influence. I also decided that I wanted to incorporate surrealist elements that would emphasize this sort of dreamlike, escapist kind of mindset when I listen to music. I also had planned on using oil pastels, colored pencils, and pen, and some watercolor, but overall planning on mixed media and collaged elements. And what this all meant to me was my interaction and perspective of how these other creative forms like music make me feel, and I do listen to music really deeply and sometimes create music videos and stories in my head while listening, so I thought this was a perfect opportunity to create thumbnails or a photograph of some of the ideas I have. And because I know myself so well, in my plan, I even wrote down that I may change my mind on which songs to use depending on my new discoveries of music, and part of me would like to go about this intuitively, but I will decide on the 3 songs ahead of time. And what actually ended up happening is I scratched this whole entire idea and actually zoomed in even further and decided to capture the daydream state of mind. So what the pieces ended up being was no longer a response to music, although the first one was guided by the first song I chose. The rest were now a representation of daydreaming and escaping.
But like I said, the first piece was a response to a song, but also...
So, in the first piece of the series, I have a metaphorical scene of entering this mental state. But it's also a real depiction from the outside world of what it may look like to play in your head. So the walking fingers as an action of playing pretend, I thought was the best representation of this. And the colors I used were heavily influenced by the song I chose initially, which was Spaceman by Graham Cartner. And then the imagery taking place, so definitely the colors, the vibe of this was from the song. And the cartoonish elements, I like also emphasize the lines between the reality and imaginary that I was trying to convey. And this image is actually a photograph I took. So since the first piece was the entrance to the state of mind, I wanted the second piece to be entirely engulfed in the state of mind. I really wanted to stay away from, this sense of reality and realism. And in the first one, I captured a more realistic perspective on this. And here I just wanted it to be totally like imaginary. Although there isn't many ties to reality in this one, as you can see in the first one, there is a red string, which in a sense is this connection or transfer to this realm. The string is what guides us from what's real and imaginary, and the strings that connect the figures are a symbol of what exists when being sort of present and somewhere else in your head. So this pink, orange-eared creature is the grounded individual and is also in tune with the pink floating, kind of sedated looking creature in the clouds. I guess the part of me that is empty and very far away from reality. But what is hanging from this creature is this familiar but also severely ambiguous figure, and anonymous, but only having a silhouette and buttons for faces. And those silhouette figures are, in a way, a combination of being grounded, like the sense of being here, but also, because it's so anonymous and ambiguous, it's really not here. So even in this scene, there's a sense of familiarity due to the background, which is a cornfield that I see almost every day driving to school. And it's a very common, and even though it's kind of like a comfortable scene, it's not really clear where this is. And in a lot of ways, it's in the middle of nowhere. I think this contrast between thinking you know what it is and then also having it not be entirely clear, I think conveys this confusion and kind of ties back to what it feels like to be here and not here. And although
the overall idea is daydreaming and escaping. In a lot of ways, this could be dissociating. So with it being kind of depicted a little grim here, not exactly grim, but a little like mysterious, dark in a way, I think those are some of the dissociative aspects that I tried to capture. And for my last piece, the way I wanted to conclude this whole series was revolving around the idea of meeting the creators. And to me, this means meeting the many versions of myself, the ones that kind of like conduct these thoughts, and it's never just one Cami. I feel like there's so many, and in here I tried to just depict different personalities. So they're not exactly human or animal either, and kind of ties back to the other things, which is not being something but still being something that you can make out of. So basically an abstraction of these common characters that we all kind of know. And just like the other two pieces, I kept the red string, and in terms of what this means in the background is, the forefront are the characters, and the background with the string, which is still like the connection to reality and daydreaming or dissociating. At this point, it's sort of the world. Like, you're kind of in the world and you're meeting the people that are in that world. So I thought it made sense to leave it in the background, almost like they're mountains. It's this scene. And I also used fabric and oil pastels and buttons. So it's this really mixed media piece. And I think I wouldn't have been able to capture my idea if it wasn't for the use of like many materials, since honestly, like, trying to describe your mind is, very complex and complicated, and I think the best way to capture it is through many materials, many elements that make up one thought or one idea. And even in the second piece, I also incorporated the different textures, different fabrics, buttons. And also, these are things I've collected over the years, and I think do say a lot about, I guess, like, my creative visions.
But yeah, overall, I think this was a cool way to represent escaping and daydreaming, starting with what it looks like realistically, what it looks like imaginary, and seeing what's at the root of it. These characters, these different entities. So I hope you enjoy, and if you have any questions, please let me know.